Today, I wanted to celebrate the 50 years of hip-hop history. Yes, the anniversary of hip-hop by talking about one of the most sensational and innovative tools that pushed the genre to where it is to this very day, and that is the MPC. Clearly, that is something that I talk about on this channel. However, I want to do a tier list on the vintage MPCs and not the brand new MPCs for obvious reasons. I'm gonna exclude them from the video. And I definitely know that I will hear from you guys in the comment section. And I wanna know, what is your favorite vintage MPC? So the categories are as follows. I have legendary, good, aight, basic, and ass. I know y'all are very curious of which vintage MPC I will put in the ass category. It's always someone that is very curious about that. So the first MPC I want to just address is this one right here. And I'll put this in the good category. And that is the MPC 4000. The first time that I actually got to work with the 4000 was through the Dungeon family, specifically Organized Noise. Big shout out to Ray Murray. And I was thoroughly impressed with this MPC. This long story short, this is the flagship MPC that came out after the MPC 2000 XL, which we'll talk about more later. It had a CD-ROM on that thing. I mean, that in itself was incredible for the time period. And, you know, it had all the bells and whistles, including more that the MPC 2000 XL didn't have, you know, off top. The LFO system, it had a synth engine on that thing. Though the synth engine wasn't all that great, it was a precursor to what we have now on the modern day MPCs. And a lot of people kind of overlook this unit, and I think it's worth every penny if you can get one on the aftermarket. I would recommend that you check out Reverb or eBay or something like that. And if you can go to your local pawn shop and you see a 4000 in that mug and it's like $1,000, or even if it's $1,600, it's worth the freaking money. Clearly, it had the biggest screen of all the MPCs at that particular time. Even though it was like a fixed screen, it was still the biggest screen that you can get. And again, it was a precursor to what the MPC X is to this very day. And also, it had pretty much a standard preamp on that mug that was for, you know, phono turntables. And, you know, I know a lot of you guys like to talk about converters and all that. A lot of people say that it's one of the best sounding MPCs of all time. So, you know, take it or leave it. I'm not going to get into that argument with people in the comment section. As a matter of fact, leave a comment below if you have a MPC 4000, if you experienced it. But chopping up samples on there, it was a lot of refined stuff about it. Now, I ain't gonna lie to you, one of the things that I did notice about the MPC 4000, it was a bit flaky on the OS side at that particular time, or just that one that I had touched. Because I have worked with every MPC, every vintage MPC I've worked with. And, you know, I'll talk about the ones I own later. It was a little flaky, but at the same time, you know, every single piece of gear that you would get, especially vintage gear, will have something, a quirk that you won't like, but I wanted to at least address that. There were some crashes every now and then. It wasn't all the time, but every now and then. And I'm not trying to get into who uses the MPC, but clearly, as someone that is a huge Just Blaze fan, Just Blaze uses this thing, and yeah, when Just Blaze uses something, and then my mentor Ray Murray of Organized Noise, yeah, I'm gonna be a little biased. Matter of fact, I'll put this in the legendary section because it had so many things that was great about it. So this next one, I know a lot of people won't agree with me about, and it's the MPC 2000. I'll put it in the aight category. Oh boy, here comes the hate. Just to be clear, this is my first MPC that I owned, and I thoroughly enjoyed the MPC 2000. It was a gift from an artist that worked with Nitty on the Beat. And it was Nitty on the Beat's MPC, and yeah, so it was coming from a legend themselves, and I had the whole entire thing. But one of the biggest things that I want to highlight is this was the first non-Roger Lynn MPC, which speaks volumes in itself. So there was a lot of quirks that people that were moving on from, or trying to move on from, the MPC 3000 didn't like about the 2000. If I'm not mistaken, the clock The PPQ on there was totally different from the 3000, and if you know, then you know that the 3000 itself has probably one of the most and quirkiest PPQs that you'll ever use. So moving on from that, it didn't bring much to the table when we're talking about like from over to one unit to the other, especially from the 3000. However, if you was only a 2000 head and clearly you only cared about the 2000 at that particular time. Now, even AKAI acknowledged that because they end up releasing another unit. And I don't want to move over the fact that clearly Kanye West used the 2000. So it's not like the 2000 couldn't make any bops. A lot of people think that the MPC 2000 didn't have a great sound. I will note that, but it does have a pretty decent sound. All the MPCs have their own kind of individual sound, I would say, you know, and we'll talk more about that later because there's one I would like to point out. The reason why I say that the 2000 is alright, and I'll just have to go over here and address it now, because you have this baby right here, which happens to be the most popular one, and that's the MPC 2000 XL. Everybody and their mama looks for this on the aftermarket, and it's for a specified reason. The main reason why I have it above the 2000 is obvious. Well, track mutes were implemented. It had a track mute, dedicated track mute button, and that is one of the biggest reasons why a lot of people like the MPC series altogether, is because when you have track mutes and when you duplicate a sequence, it makes it easier to arrange stuff in song mode. And yeah, we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But yeah, it introduced a bit reduction, which happens to be one of the things that everybody likes about, you know, the older MPCs or the Roger Lynn series, in particular the 3000, you know, when you're working with, and mind you, if you're working with S&D files altogether, you're going to get 22.1 because it's a sound file. That's the old sound format for computers. Now we have WAV files or whatnot, and I know you guys get triggered from that. But yeah, it also introduced a feature called region chopping, and that is very huge for everything that has to do with the MPC, because if you created a perfect loop, then you was able to chop into regions and have it fixed. It also introduced time stretching, by the way. Yeah, so this is the first MPC to have time stretching on it, and we all know about that. And yes, it's on the current generation MPCs, and yeah, and by all means, I think it's a pretty good investment. I just don't think it's worth $1,600. I mean, granted, you know, a lot of people will argue with me about it. I do think it is one of the most sought after MPCs for a reason, because so many legendary producers, I can't even name it in this video, it would take too long, use the MPC 2000 XL and swear by it. Also, it's worth noting, after all the criticism of the 2000, that they put a file management system on there, which made it easier for you to manage your files in between like this different directory system that's very familiar to people that are working on, you know, like a Windows computer or something like that. Not saying it's Windows, but it was one of the things that they had implemented that, you know, I do have to bring up. And before I forget to mention it, it did have a special multi-effects card that you can buy separately. I think it was like $200, $300 back in the day. And I think it still sells for that price because of rarity of parts and stuff like that. It's pretty good. It's a very effective effects unit. It added more effects to your MPC 2000 XL. And if you get the blue MPC 2000 XL, you're supposed to get the 8 outs on the back, which, mind you, by the way, you can expand the MPC 2000 and the 2000 XL to 8 outputs, but the blue one is supposed to have them off top, as well as the multi-effects card. Some people will try to hustle you on the aftermarket and take that out and the multiple outs out and sell them separately, or charge you far too much for that. And yeah, that kind of sucks, but yeah, that's one thing I want you to look out for. Out of the 2000 series or the similar MPCs, I think the best one would probably be the 4000. If you're a collector, then yeah, you're gonna have to catch them all, clearly. So I want to go ahead and move on and talk about the 3000. I'm gonna go ahead and put the 3000 in the legendary status. Clearly, it makes sense to do that. Come on, fam, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna say that it's not legendary for multiple reasons. However, I'm gonna go ahead and put the limited edition version right in front of it, and I'll explain why. So the MPC 3000 clearly needs to be up here because it was, again, one of Roger Lynn's creations. This is the, you know, the legendary status of the MPC history and hip hop history because of the things that it brought to the table versus the 60. Clearly the 60 has a lot of quirks that I thoroughly enjoy about it. And yeah, I will have to talk about that in a little bit. And also, I would like to say this about the 3000, the clock. The clock is phenomenal on that thing. It gives you such a different groove set when you turn note off. And, you know, I don't want to spoil my next video, but there are things I want to highlight about that again, modern day MPCs can do without that. However, with this unit in particular, you will notice a whole lot different when it comes to sequencing. Clearly, this is the hallmark of all the MPCs. Everything that the modern day MPC is based after, it wouldn't exist unless the 3000 and the 60, clearly, because Roger Lynn brought so much to the table. The design of it, phenomenal. I thoroughly enjoyed my MPC 3000 LE. Clearly, I'm a huge J Dilla fan. I'm a huge Dr. Dre fan and Jermaine Dupri fan and so forth. There's so many different producers in hip hop that have influenced me to have one of these, and big shout out to the homie Destructo for, you know, looking out for me on the MPC 3000. Anytime a person comes into my studio or my office and they see the 3000, they lose their shit, even if you don't know anything about it. Some of the things, again, that it does extremely well and is truly unique on this unit, and were kind of reintroduced on the 4000. When you sample stuff inside of this thing, you have 3 different settings. You have low, medium, and high, I believe. And when you sample it in there, it reduces the point of view trying to normalize it. You don't have to normalize like stuff when you sample inside of the 3000, and it gives it a huge advantage over even the modern day MPCs, which I don't know why in the world they would take that away. But then again, they took it away from all the other MPCs on the market or the aftermarket these days. They didn't consider that one of the biggest boons of why hip hop producers thoroughly enjoy using it, meaning that you can further process stuff on the fly when you sample things in there. And that's why it's a big deal about the 3000 outside of like the sequencer. Now, there are some cons for this right here. It's not all perfect, but some of the things that you will have to get over, and it actually will probably make you a much better music producer altogether, or a musician, is it didn't have waveforms. Like, you could not see the actual waveform on the screen like you would on the 2000 XL and above. And that was a bit of a disappointment, but I knew about that anyways. And it shouldn't hinder what you should do in your creative process. There's a feature in particular I've already talked about, if you follow me on social media, that I don't want to ruin it now, but it makes this much more precious. Another con clearly is the floppy disk and SCSI, and the fact that, you know, if you want to save your tracks, because it only has like 32 megabytes max, and that is standard on the limited edition MPC 3000. So if you get an MPC 3000 and it doesn't have the standard 32 megabytes, which gives you 300 seconds of sampling time, which is far more than enough to do that, dude, I'm telling you, bro, they're trying to rip you off. So, and that's why I have it over the original MPC 3000, and not to mention the beautiful chassis that I've already talked about. And J Dilla, come on. So the next one on the list I want to talk about, let's go with the 1000. And I don't know, I had to put it in the good category. It's behind the 2000 XL, though that's kind of unfair, because I don't want people to be screaming in the comment section, but I'll just say this about the 1000. So there's a couple of things that make the 1000 unique. Clearly, when they moved on from just floppy disk, or you just attaching a zip drive to your SCSI on the back of your MPC, they had compact flash. And this was also one of the first MPCs that you can implement to the computer via USB Type B to Type A. And that has to be noted because that made it easier for people to dump their files and their tracks and stuff on there, as well as the ability to kind of easily interface the MPC so you can track stuff out. And that is another thing that I wanted to point out. There's plenty of third-party software out there on the market. However, one of the things that will be mentioned over and over again, the MPC 1000, it didn't have the greatest OS, and that wasn't one of the things I wanted to address in this video, as well as, you could just get JJOS, and I highly recommend that for, the past MPCs, well, the ones after the 4000 and so forth. But it's one of the more affordable MPCs, and I think that's the one that sticks out to me the most, because the first time I got to play with the MPC 1000 was with P-Funk, George Clinton. George Clinton actually had that in the studio. Big shout outs to the homie Sir Nose. He's a big homie of mine that introduced me to George Clinton and Funkadelics and stuff like that. Personally, big part of moment in my life. Almost got me teared up. But yeah, so when I worked with this, I noticed that, it had one thing on there that was missing from the other MPCs in the past, and that was, or actually not missing, but BPM chopping. And once I had that, they called this the cheater MPC. Like, a lot of people didn't like the fact that, you could just automatically BPM chop stuff up, but you still had to trim things up to make it perfect, just like on any other MPC or whatnot. But yeah, the fact that, you had a lot of visual cues and stuff like that, it made it seem like it was easier to use. So yeah, the beef lived on back then. I'm telling you, I'm old enough to remember all of the teasing and stuff like that. Oh, you got the 1000. You're not a real producer. Yeah, people were really petty, and still are, but really petty back in the day. So imagine using FL Studio when it was called Fruity Loops. Yeah. But either way, you can't go wrong with this MPC. I think it's a good MPC for what it is. It shouldn't cost you more than 1,000, but some people will push it for a little bit more because clearly it's, a vintage piece. The next one I have to talk about, man, and I don't know. Woo! The 5000. I know. And if you know, you know. And what I mean by that is, again, this is one of the new market MPCs. Like, they had moved on, and the company had been bought by a music brand and stuff like that. We'll talk about that in the MPC history video that I'm working on. I've been working on for about 3 months now. But just to sum it up or whatnot, it has some pretty cool quirks, but it had one of the most insane quirks. And one of the biggest stories that I'm going to sum up real quick was Just Blaze. Clearly, I mentioned the MPC 4000 for a reason. I have it up in the very top because, again, everybody loved the MPC 4000. If you can get the 4000 over the 2000 XL, a lot of people went with the 4000 for obvious reasons, because of the synth engine and whatnot. But the 5000 pretty much was doubled down as like the new 4000, and Just Blaze did not like it at all. And it was due to the new OS and things not making sense because it was totally different from the legendary workflow of the MPCs where it's been in the past. And yeah, it didn't get a good rap. But overall, again, this is one of the MPCs that you can put JJOS on and improve, but that kind of took down the value in the aftermarket. Of course, it has that particular story out there, and Just Blaze being upset about that, and rightfully so, as he's a big consumer of that, and this is how he makes his money, making beats and so forth. But the big screen allowed for a lot of things, clearly, like the MPC 4000, and the fact that it had the multiple faders on there, and those are things that were pretty much brand new to the MPC world, and people had demanded and that's one of the things that you could thoroughly enjoy about the 5000. And yeah, it's I think it's alright. Now here's one I know people are going to have a problem with, but I don't even care because I have to put it in the good category. I would put it in the legendary category, but then I would be pushing it. The MPC 2500, I have to mention The Alchemist clearly, because that's one of his mainstays to this very day is the MPC 2500. and A-Rap Music, which is also one of my favorite producers too, that, you know, push that, and Ninth Wonder, because Ninth Wonder is one of the people, and I don't want that to be the reason why you bought it, but that's the reason why I bought the 2500. However, I got mine on the aftermarket because the people at the pawn shop were stupid and they sold it for like $125. Clearly, you're not gonna get that price. I'm just saying. But if you get it for under $1,000, that is a steal. This also came with the 8 outs on the back by default, and you have multiple ways. I believe like 4 MIDI outs. I think it was like 40 MIDI out. I gotta look at the back of my MPC 2500. It's in the back, but I'm one of the people that are kind of biased again, because I think it has a phenomenal sound to it. Yeah, I kind of feel that way about certain MPCs or whatnot, but one in particular that I haven't talked about. But as far as the 2500 goes, I thought it had a pretty decent sound. Being able to adjust the volume in the back, like you can adjust the gain, like you can set it to like 0 dB, 12, plus 12, negative 12, you know, so you can have dynamic range, or you can really push the actual output of the unit. And that's one of the things that I want to mention, because that's important to the MPC 2500. I also had the same issue as the 1000 and the 5000, but JJOS is available to you for free, and then you can pay for the expanded version where you have time stretch and stuff like that. And the other thing I liked about it was the BPM chopping, just like the 1000, and you know, just more aisles and buttons and stuff like that, which does account for something. USB at the back of the unit. I forgot to mention that the 5000 has the USB as well, so that you can hook it up to your computer. And compact flash drive, you also could put a CD-ROM on the thing. I also forgot to mention that on the 5000 as well. The 5000 had the CD-ROM option, by the way. It wasn't on there by default like the 4000, by the way, and I could be wrong about that. But one thing I will say, just as a coping point for, you know, just me being a 2500 fanboy off top, would be to look for the 2500 if you cannot get the 2000 XL or the 4000. You won't be disappointed because you won't really know. But yeah, I recommend it highly, and yeah, I'm pretty sure people will argue with me in the comment section. There's a lot of good things that I thoroughly enjoy, and JJOS makes things a whole lot easier. One thing I will say as a big con though is it's one of the few MPCs where it is extremely difficult to arrange stuff in song mode, unlike the 3000 and the 60. And that actually can be applied to the 2000 XL and the 2002. Yeah, it's not so easy to use, but one of the biggest things that I also forgot to mention about the 5000 and the 2500 and so forth, you are able to edit your MIDI events, and JJOS also goes a step further in that regard to where it shows it visually. And it should be duly noted that if it wasn't for the MPC, then you probably wouldn't have your day-to-day average DAW piano roll. Though FL Studio does it the best, I think it's worth to note that, you know, that came from the MPC first. So this should not come as a shock. No, I'm not gonna put that in the ass category, but I will put it in the basic category for obvious reasons, and that is the MPC 500. Clearly, there's a reason why I have the MPC 500 in this category. It is pretty basic, I mean, to be honest. No waveforms, given the time period that it came out, you know, versus like the 2000 XL and so forth. Like, it's a bit of a downgrade, but I think everybody expected that because of this form factor. It was the MPC-1 of this particular time, but unlike the MPC-1, which gives you everything that the X has, except for like the extra buttons and the workflow and the extra IO, you couldn't expand it like how the MPC-1, you can just stick a audio interface on the back of it of any type, and you can expand your IO and so forth, or you know, you can just add more MIDI implementation just by having a USB MIDI port. So yeah, those are things, and not to mention, you know what, I'm gonna keep it on task. Let's stay on task here. So it had less features than any one of the MPCs that exist. However, I think it's a pretty awesome piece to collect. So if you find one, though it's extremely rare, you should get it if you are a collector. Not to mention that it's not extremely hard to use. I mean, you can make bops on it. Some of the workflow of the older MPCs exist on it by default. And again, I'm not gonna talk about it, but yeah, you can, chop up things in a specific manner that is tried and true to the older MPCs. So yeah, it's not a total loss if you end up getting one and not knowing anything about it. And I don't know much about it as far, yes, it does have USB type B to type A, so it does have kind of a modern workflow for those MPCs of that time. So you have a lot to invest in. I almost forgot to mention, and it's important that I do, that it has the least amount of polyphony, so you won't be able to do not a lot on this. It has the lowest memory count of most of the MPCs that you can get at that particular time, because you can expand the 2500 up to 128 megabytes. 2 MPCs left, and I will go ahead and put the original 60 right here. I know people are gonna be upset, but I'll go ahead and put the cash register biasly right here. Matter of fact, you know what? I'll put it right here, and I'm gonna tell you why in a second. So I know I wasn't gonna live down the comment section if I put the 60 behind the 4000. I know a lot of people will be so pissed. So I'm gonna go ahead and put them in their respectful areas. I will put the Mark II as the most legendary for specified reasons over the 60. Clearly the 60 is the very beginning. It represents everything that Roger Lynn had implemented and wanted in sampling. It was a budget sampler for that particular time, though it was expensive as hell. And yeah, if you look on the aftermarket, you're not gonna get a 60 or a 60 Mark II for cheap. Same thing with the 3000, respectfully, because those are the Roger Lynn MPCs. The 60 has a huge boon if you're into your lo-fi sound, because it's the only 12-bit MPCs, okay? And true converter 12-bit MPC, and that crunch. Look, I'm gonna put Marlo Diggs' link in the description box to his YouTube channel. Every single time he has the 60 Mark II up there, which is the cash register MPC. I know people don't like that design over the original 60. I don't give a damn, because when I look at the MPC 60 Mark II, I think about it as a cash register, because dude, man, I make money making beats. That's the way I look at it, at least. And I'm pretty sure that's how other people looked at it when they got it. It's like, damn, like this my money machine right here. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, of course, floppy disk drive, so you got to be aware of that. And yeah, you can, with all the older MPCs, you can bump it up and get a converter to where you can put in a drive, like a SD card drive or a flash drive reader, and then you can, overlook the floppy disk type workflow, which is very painful, in modern day times. And, buying floppy disk and stuff like that are actually pretty expensive. But yeah, so all the workflow of the 3000 clearly is on the 60, and some of the things that they implemented and changed on the 3000, which concealed it or whatnot over, the 60, is there. Also 32 megabytes is the max amount of memory that you can get for the 60 and the 3000. So if you can get a 60 over the 3000, or if you want a 60 over the 3000, you shouldn't feel that bad. A lot of the workflow hasn't changed. A lot of the things that you could do with the 60 in the 3K is about the same, relatively. So I would definitely say, yeah, this is a piece for the times, and I'm still looking for one. I mean the cash register MPC 60, because of the legendary workflow, the history behind it, and that particular sound. This is the sound, if you like 12-bit over 16-bit and so forth, where, the MPC 4000 actually went up to 96 kilohertz, which, it had the crystal pristine quality that people were desiring of that time period. However, you can go to get this 12-bit and hold that. you know what I'm saying? And it had less to do with the sound file format and more so to do with the output of it. Check out Marlo Diggs' video in the description box and listen to the bop. I'm telling you, it goes without saying, you know, Rodney Jerkins, I just had to mention Rodney Jerkins, Jermaine Mcree, and so many different producers. I mean, Dr. Dre had one, Marley Marr had one, Teddy Riley, bruh, I'll be here naming people all freaking day when it comes to the 60, Premier, bruh, look, listen, so many different people, DJ Shadow, you know what? Like, so many legendary producers on the 60 and the 3000 and so forth. But yeah, to the right of me, I have more content for that ass. Make sure that you subscribe. If you are into the modern day MPCs and you want a master class for those, I definitely have links in the description box for that. Help support. I'm still working on my MPC X one. Dude, it's going to be a long one. And I definitely want to hear from you guys about your favorite MPC of all time. If you are a vintage MPC collector or you worked with the MPCs, knowledge, power, and keep it civilized.